Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to thread the needle between multitasking and ADHD. Now I would like to start off by saying that there is a common misconception in the phrase multitasking because the brain doesn't actually multitask. It switches very fast between different focal points that we have going on in our imagination and inside of our mind's eye. So today, we're going to dive deep into what is happening behind the scenes, behind that little noggin of yours up there. And we're going to dive deep into what is truly happening because I'll be honest, I've used the phrase many times myself, multitasking. But in all honesty, what is truly happening is we are switching tasks mentally, which causes us to use more mental energy. And this will also help you to understand why the term emotional dysregulation is often associated with ADHD. Before we get started, I want to share with you an acronym that I created by switching the letters of ADHD around from attention deficit hyper disorder to hyper direct attention drive. And by the time we get done with this video, I hope to have provided you enough information for it to add value to your life, for you to be able to take these and implement these things into your life for a better understanding and a happier well-being for yourself. And we will also discuss those emotions and the feelings. As The Secret is the Feeling by Neville Goddard, the book has been one of my subjects that I have often talked about on this channel. By the time I get done with this, everything's going to make a lot of sense. So, ADHD, right? Attention deficit. So that tells us a lot right there, right from the start. And to be honest, many years ago, ADHD wasn't even a thing. And if we go back even further in time, we start to understand that it is a modern symptom. But if we understand what is causing the symptom, we can eliminate that and we can find emotional regulation in our own lives. We can find peace and balance. And we can also learn to conserve our energy and redirect that flow into something more productive for our own lives. Stick around, guys, because we are going to dive deep. Each time you switch between tasks, from typing a report to answering someone's question, your brain needs time to reorient. Studies show that switching can reduce productivity up to 40% in completing tasks. Even a brief conversation interrupts working memory and mental flow. So 40% reduction in being able to be efficient in what it is that you're doing. Those little 2 and 3 minute talks, those phone calls, I need this now, all these different things that stopped and interrupt you from what it is you're focusing on causes you to pull your attention away and then have to refocus and then come back to it. Now, where your focus goes, the energy flows. And if you've been watching my channel long enough, you know that we look at emotions as energy because it is the emotional body that is the energy that is put into motion. So we start to understand emotional dysregulation happens because our attention is like a ping pong ball and it is trying to follow the focus. So if we focus like a flashlight, the energy in the battery has to shine that beam wherever you point it. And if that flashlight is going all over the place, guess what? So is the energy from the battery as it's being drained. So if we can learn to start to have mental blocks, mental boundaries, and block out certain sounds around us, then we can start to take control of our own mental energy, our emotional energy, and we can become more efficient with what it is that we are focusing on. So attention fragmentation is another thing that is associated with ADHD. I like to think of this as flipping through channels. Have you ever done that where you're channel surfing and you're just flip, and you're catching little screenshots that are maybe not even a second long, but after a while you've flipped through 300 channels and you've really not spent any time watching TV other than watching the channels as they flip by. To me, I see this as fragmented energy because each one of those pictures took energy to create it and you watched it go by as you flip through the channels. Even if the conversation is related to the task, it still fragments focus. This leads to more errors, longer completion times, and shallower thinking. It is particularly detrimental to deep work, which requires long, uninterrupted stretches of concentration. Very interesting. So, attention deficit, hyper disorder. So, the hyper part would be trying to pay attention to too many things at one time. Have you ever been around people that have to comment on every conversation that is happening around them? Maybe the conversation has nothing to do with them, but they always have to add their opinion. If you were focusing on your work, you wouldn't have time to interrupt and put your opinion into that conversation. That to me is a sign of someone who is having trouble focusing and putting their attention on the task that they are doing. And I know this because I spent many years that way, where it was very hard for me to focus, very hard for me to regulate my own emotions. And that is the whole reason for my channel, guys. There are so many aspects about healthy living that have manifested through my channel. And yes, I use the word manifest in the same context as ADHD, because there is a hidden superpower within this. If you can learn to train and focus and redirect your emotional energy and your thoughts and focus. So here's something interesting. The prefrontal cortex handles executive functions and focus. When forced to switch between speaking and problem solving, the brain creates a kind of bottleneck. During routine or automatic tasks, such as cleaning or walking, the brain doesn't hurt productivity very much. Why? Because it is one of those automatic functions like breathing. We don't sit around thinking about breathing. We don't sit around and think about how many steps it takes for us to get up and walk across the room. So those type activities are less of a mental load. And I can tell you right now, and I'm sure a lot of you might have experienced something like this. Me personally, I enjoy cutting grass. When I'm on the riding mower, it frees my mind up because I don't have to put a lot of thought into cutting grass. So I find myself oftentimes during those times of cutting grass, able to kind of clear out my mind. The same thing happens when we exercise and we get into these routines where the body can kind of do its own thing. You know the routine, just like walking, you've done it enough times. It doesn't take an extreme amount of mental energy to complete a task. The more that we learn to control our focus, the more that we learn to do this on the internal side, the within part of us, the better these other aspects will start to follow along. Again, the energy flows where the focus goes. So practice and mental practice is also a very useful tool to sharpen that mental focus, so to speak. When you're constantly pulled by outside demands, talking, notification, multitasking, your brain gets caught in a cycle. Reduced sustained attention, short focus spans, impulsive reactions, and weakened working memory. These are all also core symptoms of ADHD, but anyone can have them. Let me read this again. These are core symptoms of ADHD, but anyone can have them. My hair is literally standing up right now, guys. I'm getting hit with waves of chills. If you watch my channel long enough, you know what's happening behind the scenes right now. I am feeling the vibe. So there's a mechanism in the brain. Let's explore what is happening here. The prefrontal cortex can become overloaded. The region responsible for attention and decision making gets overloaded with rapid switching. And I have a strong intuitive suspicion that that rapid switching is also directly tied to our emotional dysregulation or regulation. There is also the mental fatigue and forgetfulness and disorganization that happens between this. So a lot of times we can get so caught up in doing things, and we are trying to do too many things at one time. And this is where the forgetfulness part comes into. And then we are ultimately exhausted because we are trying to juggle too many things at one time. And when I started to meditate, when I started to really allow myself to be still, like force myself to be still, this is when I started to really understand that the stuff that I'm reading to you right now was actually more relevant than I initially thought, because I started to understand the internal workings and it was like a light bulb going off. The other thing that happens with this is dopamine dysregulation. Dopamine is a chemical compound in the body, and we often talk about alchemy on this channel, guys. It is all the chemicals in the body. There are 4 major chemicals that make up the human body, and there's a lot of other ones that are involved, but one of the mainstays is dopamine. And dopamine works on the reward system of the brain. So the feeling of being able to accomplish something or completing a task is often rewarded by the brain through the dopamine chemical compound. So constant switching can hijack the dopamine system, rewarding short bursts with novelty. You start to crave the interruptions, making it harder to sustain effort on long tasks. Now, why would you crave an interruption? Because it is more exciting than the task that you are focused on. Let's say, for example, that you're studying for an exam, but in the background, someone's watching TV and you hear something that grabs your attention. And next thing you know, 1 minute has gone by, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes have gone by, and you have just been drafted, or your attention drifted into another realm or room where the entertainment has caught your attention. And if you understand the word entertainment, it is to bind attention. And that's very interesting when we talk about ADHD itself. So we crave these interruptions because they work on the dopamine system, that reward system in the brain. It is like being pulled like Toucan Sam in those commercials where he's following his nose. But these are actually distractions, and the ultimate reward of completing the task now has taken even longer. So we start to have this pendulum effect where we are swinging for that dopamine hit, and we are ultimately draining ourselves in the process. If we don't ever allow ourselves to find rest and relaxation in between different events in our lives, we can start to actually lower that dopamine level to it becomes very low, and the symptoms magnify. They become worse. It is harder to pay attention. Our emotions become chaotic, and it is hard for us to really regulate ourselves and find that peace in the middle again. So multitasking and tolerance, people with ADHD show greater difficulty with task with switching, but non-ADHD individuals placed in hyper-distracting environments develop similar symptoms. Chronic multitaskers, even without ADHD, display lower working memory capacity, higher distractibility, lower ability to filter irrelevant stimuli. So stimulation on the nervous system and regulations of the emotions, all of this goes back to the feeling that we have within the body, and also being able to keep a train of thought, right? When I started to understand it like this, the train of thought, we could also see this as a stream of consciousness, and we're going to dive into that a little bit later on in this video. But if your thoughts are kind of ping-ponging all over the place, and you're worrying about this, and the next minute you're worrying about this, and then you're thinking about this, and then you're thinking about this, perhaps you have taken on so much at one time, and now you have overstimulated or overstressed the prefrontal cortex, and now the stimulation of the emotions within the body is affecting the nervous system. So there is this cause and effect with all of this that is happening. And if you don't know better, it's hard for you to do better. But once you start to learn and you stick with it, you can start to practice and take control of your emotions and become the master of yourself. So here's something interesting. I often talk about patterns on my channel, and I often talk about cycles. Well, patterns, as it turns out, they can be anything. They can be good or they can be bad. They can be indifferent. So when we talk about patterns, one of the best ways that helped me to understand things was learning about something called cymatics, where we are able to see what sound looks like when they take a plate and they pour some kind of substance, either like sand or some other granule type substance. Some people will use water, and they will generate a sound under the plate, and according to whatever sound or frequency is played, the vibration will create the molecules into a pattern. Now, through many studies, they've been able to dial these things in to be able to recreate things like the turtle shell and other things of nature. By doing this, we are able to understand the frequency of Mother Nature itself, which is very interesting. So when we talk about patterns and we talk about cycles, there is the frequency that goes with it. How often something is happening is the frequent base. So when we think about ADHD, there is a vicious cycle when it comes to the emotional dysregulation. Switching too much makes you feel scattered. Feeling scattered makes you seek novelty, dopamine. So when you feel scattered, you want to find something that is entertaining or pay attention to what someone else is doing. Worry about what this person over here is doing, because at the moment it seems to be more interesting to place your attention there than it is at the task that you're doing. ADHD-like state even without the disorder. So you can have symptoms of ADHD and not actually have ADHD. And this is really about the internal self. And when we start to practice meditation, and this is something that I highly recommend for anyone, I also recommend using things like 40 hertz binaural beats, which is different tones in each ear, and it creates this third tone within the center of the brain. Because what the brain is trying to do is trying to balance out these two tones and bring them into a harmonization. And when we do this and we allow ourselves to sit still, those chaotic thought patterns have to come to a rest. Now, one way you could look at this is to pour stuff into a pool. For example, like if you're pouring chlorine into a pool and you do nothing, sooner or later it's all going to settle at the bottom. However, if you take a big stir stick and you start to whip that water up and you pour that chlorine in there, it's going to mix into the water. So what we are trying to achieve when we go into meditation is to allow the thoughts to come to a settling base. Allow calmness to come over the body, because again, the emotions or energy is going to follow where the focus goes. So if we allow our focus to come in onto ourselves and we get ourselves into the state where we start to block out things that are going on over here and going on over there, we are now allowing all those chaotic thoughts to come in and settle onto the surface. And once that starts to happen, the energy, the emotions will start to follow. And once you go into the understanding of the different states of consciousness, the theta, the beta, the alpha, the gamma, and the delta, we understand the different speeds of conscious itself. Now, in my last two videos, I spoke about Mercury ruling the mind, and there was a comparison between Hermes and Thoth, which is symbolic for thought, and also the messenger of God. So if you are a fan of The Flash, then you probably understand the symbolic imagery of the wings, the lightning rod, and how thoughts are electrical impulses in the mind. And if you go back to the video before that, I spoke about a technique which is known as the hypnotic anchor, where we are able to put like a waypoint inside of our head, like a mental cue point, for us to bring ourselves back into whatever feeling we desire to be in. Now, I've been able to demonstrate this many times on camera, where I start to say things like, I am so happy and grateful. I feel the emotions of gratitude, and the hair stands up. So there is a signal coming from the brain going down into the body, as above, so below. We are sending those signals down, and then we are getting the feedback loop in the form of feelings. Now, something interesting here, the word feeling and the word filling, they sound exactly the same, but one is F-I-L-L, the other is F-E-E-L. There is a very interesting wordplay dynamic that happens in the English language itself. And might I also point out the word English, if you tweak it just a little bit, it sounds like in leash. So English puts you in a leash when you don't understand the homophones or wordplay, how different things really change the deflection of sound that comes from your voice. So this is not your typical ADHD video. However, I am going full throttle with revealing as much information and knowledge that I can to you guys. As someone who has been a performer for 20 plus years, someone who's maintained a full-time working job for 20 plus years, I have been on the edge of working both spectrums of entertainment itself and being in a workplace, having to follow instructions from others. So there is this balance I've had to find with the daytime life and the nighttime life and the different aspects of a 40-hour work week on an hourly wage versus being paid for the value that you bring to the table. Now, I can honestly tell you, in the entertainment realm of things, value pay to me is the way to go. Because in an 8-hour workday, if you only have 2 hours worth of work to do, you are going to stretch out that work to fit that 8 hours. I think there's a name for this, and I will try to put it in the comments. But what I'm trying to say is value versus hourly. And I'm not talking about salary, because I feel like salary is one of those things also where you kind of get a short end of the stick. So if you have 2 hours worth of work, you're going to make it stretch. And what happens for those other 6 hours of work? Your brain is wondering for those dopamine hits. Your brain is listening for signals on the outside instead of listening to the own signals on the inside. Your brain is wondering, and it is wondering, and it is wondering. And next thing you know, you have spent a lot of time during an 8-hour workday absolutely doing nothing productive for the company you work for and nothing productive for your own life. And for me, once that realization happened, I started this channel and I started to build a foundation for myself and my own family and people that want to join in. I started to create, and I started to understand something that I'm going to dive into next, and that is the Rockefellers. So here we go, guys. Have you ever heard the term, "Give me a nation of workers, not thinkers"? This was attributed to the Rockefellers. While the quote is often paraphrased or misattributed, there is no solid evidence of John D. Rockefeller saying this verbatim, but the sentiment reflects the spirit of the early 20th century of industrialism. The Rockefeller Foundation and others did fund standardized education systems. Where do you think the roots of ADHD came from, guys? Stick with me here now. They standardized education systems, and much of this was aligned with creating a workforce for industrialized capitalism, not necessarily free thinkers or philosophical minds. The goal was to train punctual, obedient, literate workers who could follow orders and fit into a factory-based economy. What is thinking, and how is it tied to emotional creativity? Guys, what I'm getting ready to tell you right now is what set off the light bulb in my head. And those 20 years of being in the entertainment business and those 20 years of working full-time for others, it was like a big collision and a big light bulb going off, and it went supernova. Because for the first time, I understood clearly what was happening here. This is the divergent of both of the hemispheres of the left and the right mind. Thinking, especially critical or divergent thinking, is not just mental logic, it is also imaginative, seeing possibilities outside of the norm. I've said this many times on my channel. Think outside the box, guys. Anything is possible. If you can feel it, it is possible. And we're going to get into that in just a minute. Emotional is rooted in intuition, curiosity, and passion. Risk-taking requires courage to defy conventional authority. This kind of thinking fuels creativity, and creativity is often uncomfortable for systems based on order, productivity, and control. That is a big one there, guys, control. This is why creativity can feel threatening to a rigid corporation or institutional structures. Guys, I have experienced this firsthand, and maybe you have too. If you ask too many questions, you become labeled as the problematic employee. I myself, as someone who from the age of 10 years old was fending for myself, and at the age of 14, I had my first job as a camp counselor for the Boy Scouts. I've always been able to build whatever it is that I desire, sit around and come up with ideas to bring things into fruition, even though many of the times I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I couldn't do it, so I did it. So here is where I understood this. When you ask questions about processes that don't make sense, the people who are doing the processes don't really know either. So if we are in the habit of taking things personal and you ask a question and there is not an answer to be given, just go do your job. Just go do what you're told to do. That is a typical response in these environments where asking too many questions can get you labeled as problematic or even negative. If you speak up for yourself, take up for yourself, stand up for yourself, sometimes you can be met with resistance. So the creative adult is the child who survived. Now this was quoted by Ursula K. Guin. I guess that's how you pronounce it. The creative adult is the child who survived. That is so awesome because we think about the inner child, right? I've done videos about inner child healing and the creativity of a child through imagination, because children, they are simply masters at imagining things. It is only when we try to force them to memorize stuff and to conform to being an adult that they start to unlearn the imagination, and we start to leave it behind as something that is inherently bad when it is the complete opposite. Your imagination is the foundation of creation, and I'm going to prove that to you. Emotion and thinking are not opposite, and neuroscience shows the prefrontal cortex governs rational thought. The limbic system, including the amygdala, I probably just said that wrong, it governs emotion. But they interact constantly, so that is the feedback loop I was talking about earlier. Emotional insight is essentially for intuition, moral judgment, and even abstract innovation. Standardized education equals standardized minds. The traditional schooling model rooted in Prussian and early industrial systems. It prioritizes memorization over exploration. It punishes failure rather than encouraging experimentation. And it trains us to be compliant over being curious. I often say this, guys, be curious. Allow yourself to imagine and allow yourself to feel what would it be like. Anything is possible. Creativity and independent thought often get labeled as a rebellion or disorder. So when we get environments where micromanagement and fear-based leadership is at the pinnacle of control, these jobs are managed through fear. Employees stay silent instead of suggesting better ideas. People perform to survive, not thrive. Emotional suppression leads to internal dissonance. Internal dissonance is having two thoughts that kind of go against each other while both seemingly have some truth. Now, we might have all known a manager, a boss, a supervisor, an owner who at one time, situation A is perfectly okay, but in another instance, situation A is not okay because of how they feel. And now that makes a big difference when you're trying to work with someone and they are inconsistent because they are allowing outside things to control how they feel. Then they pass the buck down because of what? The title. This is entitlement. Entitled because I am above you and what I say goes, so you have to follow my instructions even though I am not consistent with what it is I am asking you to do for me. This leads and breeds burnout, depression, apathy. The result is a depressed, disconnected society. Over 1 in 5 adults experience depression or anxiety symptoms. Job dissatisfaction is one of the top contributors to chronic stress. Creatives often feel stifled, underpaid, or under-recognized. And the reason I say this, if I go back to the understanding of working in the entertainment business and being paid for my value is up here, but on an hourly base is down here because everyone in the place has to be paid a similar wage, no matter what type of value they bring to the table, as long as they can repeat what is given to them and favoritism is applied. So the person who is creative, the person that asks questions because they want to solve a problem, becomes the troublemaker, becomes labeled as problematic because they have the creative vision to see how to solve a problem. But in some situations, as long as the problem exists, no one wants to rock the boat because that's the way it's been forever and ever. Very interesting. So liberation and imagination. Imagination is dangerous to oppressive systems. It envisions alternatives, new economies, new forms of living. It asks why instead of how high should I jump. It humanizes, empathizes, and expands. So if the experience is not expanding, it is contracting. This is the polar opposite. There can only be two. It's either expanding or it's contracting. It's either expanding or it is contracting. So logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. And that was quoted by Albert Einstein. If we were to rise from workers to thinkers, we must decolonize our minds, understand who shaped our systems and why, reclaim creative spaces in education, work, and community. Value emotional intelligence. It is not a weakness, it is wisdom. Encourage unstructured thinking. Daydreaming is revolutionary. Build ecosystems that honor dignity beyond profit margins. And guys, I have to say this right now because I understand something very clearly. Most companies make enough to make payroll in 1 month. The second month of profit, they can cover most of the expenses. Now, this is an average. This is not going to fit every single job or organization out there. But think about this for a minute. If a company can make payroll in 1 month out of 12, and in the second month, they can cover the expenses, there are 10 months of pure profit that is not being shared with the employees. Yet the employee demand is still higher than the hour. The hourly wage does not increase. How many of you out there have gone through the last 4 or 5 years with the inflation, with all of these added markups on the bottom line? So your paycheck has shrunk while everything else has cost you more, and yet you are expected to do more work for less money. So in that sense, you are being devalued by the system. The Federal Reserve plays with the money supply and they play with the rates of interest, devaluing the value of $1. So your time, your effort, and your body is being dictated by people you don't even know. Guys, there is a better way and anything is possible. I don't mind telling the truth. That's just who I am, and who I will always be is a truth teller, even if it makes me come across as a black sheep. So my goal again is to help open eyes, help to show other people that anything is possible and that you can achieve anything. So the brain, again guys, it switches, it is not multitasking. So the more that you are trying to take on at any one given time is causing your brain to switch, which is a form of oscillation. And if you understand Nikola Tesla's work, then you know what the word oscillation means. Neuroscience debunks the whole idea of multitasking. The brain doesn't actually perform tasks simultaneously, it rapidly switches, which also elevates stress and cortisol, which is a hormone of the opposite of good feelings. So, how about that, guys? And taking this needle and threading it through many different things, you start to understand the early 20th century and how we started to manipulate the education system, manipulate the medical system, manipulate through religion, right? All the 501(c)(3)s out there that operate as a religious institution who get tax breaks, they will not tell you up front. They say that religion is separate from government, but it is further from the truth because they get kickbacks. Why? No taxes. It is an operation. It runs just like a business. Yet, it is a religious institution teaching people the way, right? How many people are in these different religions who still suffer from emotional dysregulation? Because it is still part of the system. The Roman Catholic Church gave us what is known as the Western Christian mold, so to speak. You can look this up for yourself. I'm not going to dive deep into that one here today because I have other stuff I want to share with you. So, the emotional dysregulation, we're going to dive into that now. And just like I said a minute ago, how they started to manipulate the education, the medical, and even religious institutions. This is how we arrive in 2025 with a whole host of adults that are emotionally immature. That's right. We're going to dive into that right now. Maturity means that a person, an animal, or a plant has reached their final stage of growth. Someone who hasn't reached that stage is considered immature. That's easy to understand when it comes to physical development, but what about emotional maturity? The American Psychological Association defines emotional maturity as a high and appropriate level of emotional control and expression. Emotional immaturity, on the other hand, is the tendency to express emotions without restraint or disproportionately to the situation. In other words, emotional behavior that is out of control or not appropriate to the situation can be considered immature. I have actually seen bosses, owners, and CEOs stomp around like a kid. So, yes, we all can have our moments where we pop our top and we blow off some steam, but when there's a pattern to it, when it's observed multiple times on a long-term basis, you best bet that there's some emotional immaturity going on, or the lack of understanding of how to self-regulate is probably a better way to put this. Now, if you want to learn about self-regulation, I have videos on my channel for that, and I will try to link them through the cards on this video. It is more like the emotional reactions you might expect to see from a child than an adult. Here are a few signs. People who are emotionally immature don't meet society's expectations for social behavior within their age range. It's safe to assume that a grown-up will be able to consider the impact on others and pay attention to their feelings. Let me read that again. It is safe to assume that a grown-up will be able to consider their impact on others and pay attention to their feelings. ADHD, feelings, emotional dysregulation. Very interesting. Emotionally mature people can accept criticism and learn from it. So, a sign of someone who is emotionally immature will take everything personal. You can be trying to offer good advice and they will take it as an attack. They will become combative. They will want to argue. They will tell you that everything that comes out of your mouth is full of crap. They themselves will start talking about somebody else to take the heat away from them because the emotions, right? When we talk about energy flowing, where the focus goes, when you try to offer good advice to someone who's emotionally immature, it puts the focus back on them, and that is where we get to taking things personal, not being able to take criticism and to actually grow from that criticism. Very interesting when you start to understand and connect these dots. Adults with emotional maturity can think about and plan for the future. Plan for the future. Have you ever heard the term future faking? A lot of people with the narcissistic personality traits will have this grandiose thing, right? These plans are just things that make us feel good, to give us that dopamine hit and that reward system. It is short-lived and it is gone just as fast as it happens. So the future faking, because they are not able to maintain the emotional feeling to bring it into the present and to build that as a foundation and move it forward. I can't make this stuff up, guys. Emotionally immature people lack certain emotional and social skills and have trouble relating to other adults. Some behaviors can be a signal. There's that word, signal. Signals from the mind to the body to change the emotional feeling. Some behaviors can be a signal that you're dealing with an emotionally immature person. Impulsive behavior. Children are often impulsive. They speak out of turn or touch things that they shouldn't touch. They say things without thinking, however they affect other people. Over time, people learn not to do those things, but emotionally immature adults haven't learned to curb their impulses. Impulses are what? Those little firing neurons up here that are not in synchronization with the emotions. So when we are switching, we're not multitasking, we're switching. And then when someone communicates with us, we are caught in the middle of switching and it angers us or causes us to have a reactive response that is not in alignment with what was said to you. And here's something else, guys. Have you ever sent a text message to someone and the response is not in alignment? What do I mean by this? People read writing in the emotional filter that they are holding in their body. So this is indifferent. It's not good or bad. It's just words on a page. But if I'm angry and I receive a text and I'm in this mindset of complaining everything is wrong, I'm going to find something in that text that aligns with the emotional feeling that I have inside. If I am angry, then I'm going to find something about that text or find something in the words to focus that energy onto. So my response may be emotionally driven than logically read. So the understanding here is people read in their emotional filter of their own energy. Very, very, very interesting. Signs of emotional immaturity is something that everyone should really understand and learn to navigate and set boundaries around, because one time is okay. 2 times, let it slide. But third time, you're starting to set precedent for a pattern. And patterns that once they are started, they will continue unless you object to that pattern. You have to speak up for yourself, but you also have to have your own emotional balance to do so and not overreact to it. So some of the things that may happen is being in a environment where you're dealing with these type people is emotionally immature people lack those social skills and have trouble relating to other adults. But those impulsive behaviors is where we get into the emotional reactivity of things. And over time, people learn not to do those things, but the emotional immature person doesn't. So the next thing that we're going to tie with ADHD is demanding attention. Young children get bored when people don't pay them attention. You can observe this with children. Look at me, 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 look at me. Me, 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 me. So what happens when that child becomes an adult and carries that pattern into adulthood? They'll do things to draw the focus back to themselves, even if it means acting out in negative ways. Emotionally immature adults often do the same thing to draw the attention by entertainment through negative means. They may not act out in negative ways, but they may interject themselves into conversations or crack inappropriate jokes to get everyone's attention. That's a sign for somebody to say, what is wrong with you? What's happening? That's a form of an emotional hook to grab someone's attention. People don't think that I know these things, but I'm here telling you about them because I have witnessed, observed, and experienced and lived these things. And what else am I going to do? Hide from everyone? Emotionally immature people may not have a good sense. Sense is a key word here because we have 5 senses. So the word sense, I want you to remember this. They may not have a good sense of the future or how to plan for it. Refusing to take on significant responsibilities like committed relationships, careers, or investments like home ownership are signs of avoiding responsibility. Commitment is a real one here when we talk about avoidance. So let's continue. People like this might let others take care of them way beyond the point that they should be self-sufficient. This is sometimes called the Peter Pan syndrome. Very interesting. And this also is a form of narcissism. An essential facet of maturity is the ability to think about each other's needs and feelings. Immature people only appear to care about themselves. They dislike compromise, which is part of commitment and responsibility, and don't want to take other people's ideas into account. How many times have you considered an idea for yourself, but you take in consideration other people only for those people to discard your ideas? Maybe you are able to see something in the other person that they can't see in themselves, and you take that into consideration, but that is not good enough. It will never be good enough, because if the other person is only thinking about themselves and their feelings and they are not considerate of your feelings, then it is always going to be doomed to fail. So how do you prevent emotional immaturity from affecting your own mental health? If you're trying to navigate a relationship with a person who is emotionally immature, there are a few things that you can do in this situation. You can work to resolve the situation, and you can prevent any negative impact on your mental health to relieve stress by communication. Talking honestly but sensitively about their behavior is one way to start. The last thing I want to read right here is about understanding the splitting aspect within adults. Almost always there is an enabling factor. Someone who provides sustenance, shelter, and sometimes coddling. just like a crutch used to help a person with a bum leg walk. Their assistance allows the emotionally immature person to survive without growing up. Ironically, the enabler is an emotionally immature person as well, just in different ways. The way an emotionally immature adult acts today can help us understand what age they are stuck in. For example, someone can be 65 years old but have a 17-year-old emotional maturity about themselves. Someone could be 12 years old but have a 50-year-old emotional maturity about themselves. So the appearance is not always what it seems when it comes to emotional maturity. The other thing that happens with this, guys, the splitting spectrum, is there's a black and white aspect that goes to this. Splitting isn't just about seeing things in black and white. It's about living in a world of emotional extremes. It's a coping mechanism that can leave individuals feeling like they are constantly teetering on the edge of emotional cliffs. One misstep, one perceived slight, and they tumble from adoration to loathing, from confidence to self-hatred. But why does this happen? The roots of splitting often trace back to early childhood experiences. Imagine as a young child trying to make sense of a world that feels unpredictable, meaning you do not feel safe. Your emotions were not safe to be expressed. Men don't cry. Women don't cry. Be a big girl, be a big boy, put your pants on. The inconsistency in parenting is just like that inconsistent boss where you are constantly trying to appease and constantly trying to make someone else happy. This is people pleasing. And yes, this does have a lot to do with emotional regulation and ADHD. Because if you are constantly putting your focus onto other people, you are substituting your own emotional fulfillment, and now you have given away your energy. Those who struggle with splitting often find themselves grappling with intense emotions that seem to have a life of their own. It's like trying to navigate a stormy sea without a compass, where the waves of emotion crash over you with relentless force. This emotional instability can be particularly challenging in relationships where the person you adored yesterday might become the object of intense dislike today, all because of a minor disagreement or perceived rejection. The cognitive tug-of-war and understanding the psychology of splitting at its heart is a cognitive process between the left and the right brain and the emotions. Left brain, right brain, emotions. 3, positive, negative, neutral. So if we become indifferent, neutral, then we are not swinging so rapidly to one side or the other. Once we learn to find that neutral or grounding, then we can start to move that meter to the positive and stay on that side. Very interesting. When emotions run wild, the many faces of splitting start to emerge. It manifests in various ways, but some patterns are particularly common, and that is the black and white thinking, and is perhaps the most recognizable. It's the tendency to see situations, people, or outcomes either as entirely good or entirely bad. It is either good or it is either bad. But there is a center to all of this. There is a neutral to all of this. It's like saying that all men are the same, all women are the same, all bosses are the same, all jobs are the same. Everything is coming from your point of view. So that hard swing pegs you to one side or the other. And now through the filter of emotion, you start to perceive everything, and the brain is looking for confirmation that yes, this is true. Yes, this is true. And that is when we start to project ourselves onto other people. Very interesting when you start to understand the inner workings of the human body, the human mind, the human imagination. So this leaves little room for middle ground. This can lead to a constant state of that cognitive dissonance, where the world never quite matches up to these extreme categorizations. In relationships, splitting often shows up in cycles of idealization and devaluation. It's like a Sour Patch Kid. One minute, someone loves you. The next minute, you're just the worst, most horrible person on earth. Yes, all of this is part of our attention span. And the underlying thing that most people don't see is the intention. That is the inner intention or inner attention. This pattern can be incredibly destabilizing for both individuals experiencing splitting and their loved ones. Extreme mood swings are another hallmark of splitting or fragmented energy. As you can see, I come prepared today with lots of articles, and I will try to put links for everything in the comment section. And I know this video has been rather long and it's not the most typical ADHD video, but again, I'm giving you an acronym: hyper direct attention drive. So when we learn to focus on ourselves, we are taking everything and pulling it into ourselves. We are taking our attention off of this person. We are taking our attention off of that thing over there. We are taking our attention, our worries and fears and doubts, and we're pulling everything back into ourselves. We are taking all that splitting and we are putting everything back together as one whole piece. Which, get it? One whole piece. Let me have my peace and rest. Now I can start to formulate new feelings that will change the direction of my thoughts and ultimately my attention span. Nobody likes being lonely, not one person in their right mind. And guys, I've been like this for 3 years, doing this by myself. So yes, no one likes being lonely, and I have felt the loneliest of loneliness in the 3 years I have been doing this. But I can also tell you, in the 3 years of spending all this time alone, everything I'm telling you about attention and feelings and emotions is definitely, absolutely 100% real, because it was the only time and place where I wasn't being distracted was in isolation. The only time and place where somebody wasn't trying to play the sympathy card, play the victim, play this, play that, need me for this, need me for that. It was the only time in my life where I could understand what all this stuff even meant in the first place. And now, here I am making YouTube videos. Think of all the loved ones in your life right now. I'm sure there are many. Your friends, family, colleagues, partners, even random acquaintances you're fond of. What ties you to them? Because there's always something, even if you do not see it. Immediately, intuitively, we always find something in common. That is just a natural way that we form connections. And all that a connection does is solidify the relationship and lay the groundwork for even more. And of course, this is more true for people especially close to you, your tightest circle of loved ones. You would more often hear that are just like your best friend than someone you have networked with. So why does this happen? Let's come right out and say it. You think you've grown similar to them, but in fact, you were always more alike from the start. If you like someone, you are probably already similar to them. Here, I am talking about the actual similarity, not the perceived similarity, because remember, we filter things through our emotions. This is about genuine connection, not swearing you are actually in love with the exact same niche band as your crush just to feel like you have a chance with them. That would be a form of love bombing. Not only are we wired to like people with similar interests, attitudes, and backgrounds, so if you are in a relationship with someone, you are not their opposite, you are just like them. That's what this is saying. Not only are we wired to like people with similar interests, attitudes, and backgrounds to ours, there are multiple benefits to being around people that are similar to you. We love being comfortable. They say we attract what we are, not what we wish we were. We see the world as we are, not as it is. Again, because of that emotional filter that we see things through our perception. The color range of life is what I'm trying to say here. So I want to end this video on a good note and share with you from Neville Goddard's The Feeling is Secret, because to me, pointing out all this stuff is very good and educational, but giving you the tool to actually change is the most important aspect. So when it comes to the conscious mind upstairs and the subconscious downstairs, as above, so below, there's also the aspect of a guilty conscience. So most people struggle with this when they are trying to become more consciously aware. The avoidance aspect or responsibility of emotion makes us face our own mirror, our own reflection, and that is uncomfortable for a lot of people. So, the feeling is secret. You've seen me do this on camera before. I am so happy and grateful. I feel the emotions of gratitude. I am stating that I am happy and grateful, but I'm giving the command to feel the emotion that corresponds with being happy and grateful. And I can feel it pulse up my body just then. I feel the emotions of gratitude because I am happy and I am grateful. I am claiming this over myself, regardless of what anyone out there thinks. So, not by chance nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. Get into the spirit of the state desired by assuming the feeling that would be yours had you already had it. Look at that. Get into the spirit of man, the spirit of woman. This is the other aspect. The mind, the body, and the spirit. We are spiritual beings living in a physical body, having this experience on earth. So ADHD is when the spiritual aspect of us is disconnected from the physical body, and the emotions are following the focal points. So if we are focusing on everything out there, our emotional body is going to follow everything out there. And if we have ADHD symptoms and we're ping-ponging and splitting, our emotions are doing the same thing. They are following behind, follow the leader. So get into the spirit. How do we do that? Meditation and sleep are the two best ways. Neville's book says prayer. What is prayer? Prayer is not asking. Prayer is a form of predictive speech of the future. I am so happy that I am able to experience this. I am so happy that my prayer was answered. I feel gratitude ahead of the prayer being answered. So when I talk about emotions and emotional dysregulation, and I mention things like religious institutions, and we talk about the Rockefellers and the education system and the medical system and how the indoctrination of things have happened, keeping a population emotionally immature means that you can control them very easily through controlling their emotions. You cut on the 6 o'clock news. They tell you what's going on. They tell you how to feel about it. And then you sit around and worry. Is the economy going to crash? Is the stock market going to crash? What's happening with the weather? There's a war over here. There's a war over there. What's happening right here at home? When my attention is all out there and they are telling me to fear, 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 worry, 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 stress, stress, stress. Get into the spirit. Get into thyself. Get on the internal lane of the internal self and allow those emotions to follow the focus inward. Empath. Inward. Empath. As you capture the feeling of the state you sought, you are relieved of all effort to make it so. I am relieved of the effort to feel the emotions of gratitude because I have already prayed in advance and gave my gratitude to be able to feel the response, the feedback. I'm sending the signals. I am so happy and grateful. I feel is the response. Has nothing to do with a person out there. Has nothing to do with a job out there. Has nothing to do with a religion out there. Has nothing to do with anything out there. The signals from the mind, from above, sent below, and the response comes back. The law of correspondence. Faith is filling according to your faith. Filling, be it unto you. Matthew 9:29. You never attract that which you want, but always that which you are. As a man is, so he sees. To him that hath, it shall be given, and to him that hath not, it shall be taken away. Matthew 13:12 and 12:29. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created him. Genesis 1:27. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, whom being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God. Philippians 2, verse 5 and 6. You are that which you believe yourself to be. Instead of believing in God or in Jesus, believe you are Jesus or God. He that believeth on me, the works that I do, shall he also do. John 14:12. Should be, he that believes as I believe, the works that I do, shall he also do. Jesus found it not strange to do the works of God because he believed himself to be God. I and my Father are one. It is natural to do the works of the one you believe yourself to be. So live in the feeling of being the one you want to be rather than the one you wish to be. This takes me to the understanding of something else from his work. The statement, I am strong or I am healthy, is a much more powerful statement than I will be healthy or I will be strong, because the word will means that it has not happened yet. It is not in the present moment. I am is present. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. It may sound strange to walk up to your friends or group of people and say that I am God. That's probably not recommended to say. But in the silence of meditation, be still and know that I am God. If that does not electrify you and send a shockwaves of chills down your body, sit a little longer and listen, because it will electrify you and send shockwaves down your body to know that you were always connected and you always had a direct line and you never needed that emotional dysregulation, the emotional dysfunction of being saved from those immature emotions, because now you have become the master of your own vessel and you are able to direct your attention intentionally. And when you are able to intentionally direct your attention, now you have control of focus, and the energy will flow wherever you put that focus. And with that, guys, I will see you on the next one very soon. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel about it. And by the way, now that this channel is now a YouTube partner and is part of the program, I will be opening up memberships and be adding a lot of new stuff coming very soon. Watch out for the store on the channel and the Hypno Waves branding, which is also live at hypnowaves.com, where you can buy t-shirts and more. Join us, and we will see you very soon. Thanks a lot, guys.